You can do that.
You can do that via the chat box.
Yeah, that's what I tend to do. Yeah.
Yeah, say to people.
Well, I thought you've done this before.
Great. You could let us know when you want to do the polls.
Yeah. How long does it take you to transition? Oh.
We've got a bit of feedback, John. Is that you?
That's me, sorry. All done.
We all right now?
Yeah, all good.
So we're going to open up?
Yeah, no, it's open. Yep, got 13 already arriving.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, brilliant. Okay.
Going thick and fast. So welcome to all our attendees.
Yeah, we've got a good range of people coming in today. That's good to see. Very good to see from across the different membership groups. Ladies and gents, we're just going to give it to sort of a minute past because everyone tends to try and pile in around about the midday hour. So we'll just give it another 60 seconds or so if we can to allow people to sign in.
So Penny's just asking where we're all dialing in from.
Oh yeah, I think
so I've kicked off.
What Penny would like. Yeah, I see that, John. I think Penny would like to know maybe not just the where, but also the business that you're
right, yeah,
dialing in from. So
great. So hopefully people can use the chat pane. They should all know it by now.
Yeah. So we'll just let it run for a little bit longer. We are expecting a few more people.
Okay, got Cornwall on board.
Yeah. Quite southwest bias at the moment, isn't there? Bridgewater, Frome and Cornwall.
Yeah.
Hi Gary, nice to see you.
So I think we'll make a start. Others can join us. So good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome to the latest in our regular now Tuesday and Friday midday webinars. I will explain the background to this again for those that may be here for the first time. Before Easter, Constructing Excellence Southwest and Constructing Excellence Midlands, together with the Structural Timber Association, decided to run a series of webinars in terms of adding value to the membership during lockdown. These were very successful. So they joined forces after Easter, along with Constructing Excellence Wales and the Housing Forum, to bring you these regular Tuesday and Friday webinars at 12 o'clock midday. First of all, we were covering COVID-19 topics. But more recently, as we've gone through the weeks, we've broadened the portfolio of subject matter that we discuss. And I'm delighted today, we are going to be talking about that very, very critical topic of communication. And I'm delighted that Penny has given up some of her valuable time to share her knowledge and expertise with us for the next hour. Before I hand over to Penny, I would like to thank John and Howard, who have been instrumental in organising these webinars for us. And I'm going to ask Howard if he would, just to go through the house rules before Penny starts. Thank you, Howard.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Penny. Simple things. You will find in front of you a toolbar. Key one is the Q&A menu. You can ask questions to Penny by using that. Just type it in. Would ask if you'd like to own your question, so please give your name. You can certainly use the chat pane that some of you are already beginning to do. You can let us know if you would like to speak directly to ask a question. There is also a hands up facility. So during the session, and I'm sure Penny will take questions live, that would give us the opportunity to open your microphone and screen and to get into perhaps a more deeper discussion or conversation about the matter. So without any more ado, I'm going to hand over to Penny, and I look forward very much to listening to what she has to say. Over to you, Penny.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're doing okay in this beautiful sunny day. Isn't it great today? My God, I'm enjoying the sunshine as much as anyone, I'm sure. So it's been a really interesting time. I've been talking to managing directors, chief executives, leaders all over the world that I coach, and people I'm talking to, just having general conversations. And I find that the impact of the way things have changed, some people like it, some people don't. Now, depending on the type of company you're working for, you may work for yourself, you may work for a big global company. A lot of the global companies have found it quite easy because they were using Skype, Teams, Zoom is a new intervention. But a lot of people were doing it before. But I think from the leaders that I've been talking to, what they miss is that face-to-face communication, and they're actually finding it quite difficult in this virtual scenario. I mean, if I take it right now, I'm looking to adopt, you know, on my laptop to communicate to you guys. It's interesting, if I lift my view down here, it's weird, isn't it? I kind of lose connection with you straight away. So I'm going to be talking to you about some of the techniques and some of the, getting a little bit deeper into some of the reasons why it helps when we're communicating virtually. Our attention spans are shorter for starters. There's lots of distractions. I don't know if you've been seeing it on calls, but there have been children running in on calls, dogs, animals. People have had a delivery at the door and they've had to go and collect it. It's been, you know, it's a very different way of communicating. And people don't want to stay on calls. You know, the gone are the days of 2-3 hour Zoom calls. It just doesn't happen. But we need to enhance and develop our virtual communication. And today I'd like to look at these subjects just to get you thinking about it. They're rapport, trust, connection, empathy, and listening skills. And before we get into that, John, I'd like to run our first poll actually, based on those subjects. And I want to see which one do you think is your weakest area out of rapport, trust, connection, empathy, and listening. There's no judgment, it doesn't matter. It's just out of interest to see which one people find, you know, the most challenging. Sometimes people are great at one thing and not good at another. Have we got our answers? How are we doing, John?
Yeah, no, so there are 60, well, nearly 70% of people responded, Penny.
Okay.
So that's good. So it's growing all the time. So I'll show the results in a few moments.
Okay, good, good. Because it's really, you know, well, I just want to wait. I want to see which ones actually come up. Let's just give it another couple of seconds.
It's kind of hovering around 75%. So I think we'll show it if that's okay.
Yeah, good. Go for it.
We'll end the poll.
Yeah. Let's see what's up there. Connection, a big one, big one. Rapport, yeah, we're going to do a lot of that. Trust, okay. Empathy, oh, interesting. Wow, empathy. I thought that would be. Oh, okay. Very interesting. Yeah, interesting. Not what I expected, funnily enough. I'm just going to close that now. So one of the ones there that was quite high was rapport, and rapport comes from the NLP principles, and it's actually a process of developing a connection. Connection can be quite hard, especially on this way of kind of looking at people. One of the things I notice people say on Zoom calls is when you've got a screen for, this is different because it's a webinar, but when you've got a screen full of 20 people, you can see what everyone's doing. Some people are just laying back, they're all doing all sorts of, it can be very distracting. And creating that rapport when you're talking to somebody, especially on a one-to-one, can be, you know, you've got to be able to find common ground. And especially in this world, when I've been talking to some of the leaders about some of the issues they've had, one of the things they mentioned was perhaps they've got a new manager who's come in, and everyone is now working with this new person, but they've never met them in person. They don't know who they are. So creating creating that rapport with them has been quite difficult. Another one is, I want you to think about a colleague. This is an interesting one. Perhaps a colleague that you don't necessarily get on with. It's easy, isn't it? If we get on with everybody, it's great to see you, all of that. But what if it's somebody that you don't particularly get on with, and now you've really got to connect with them face to face, and it's a much stronger connection on video because you've really got to look at each other. Especially if you're in a meeting of 4 or 5 people, usually someone's leading and you can kind of sit back and relax a bit. On these virtual platforms, it's very different. Maybe you've got a new client that you can't meet in person right now, and you've got to learn how to get that rapport with them. It's quite difficult. And since I started to prepare for calls a lot more, and to get this kind of rapport, it's more about, for me, it's about the preparation. So I'll go into what happens with my preparation during the call, so that to give you an idea of the difference. So let's think, if you think about that person, I want you to think of somebody in your mind. You'll all have somebody, maybe a new person, somebody you don't get on with, you know, maybe a colleague. What do you actually know about them? What do you think about them? Especially if it's somebody new who you don't know. One of the first things I do is I jump onto LinkedIn, and I'm looking to see what their profile is, what their character, you know, where they've been working, trying to get a feel for them. So before you get on a call, are you really thinking about that individual? Because that's part of the connection. If you know something about them, then you might find something in common. I remember somebody I didn't know, I saw they'd run a marathon. And so I talked to them about that, and it instantly created that connection, that rapport. It's another thing is around how you're feeling. It's really important when you come to a call about your state of mind in the moment. Are you in the right mood? A lot of people are saying to me that they got back-to-back calls, and they kind of got Zoom exhaustion by the end of the day, or Skype exhaustion, because there's so much of this interaction. And if you have the time, one of the things I do try to do is I try to get at least 15 minutes, if I can, half an hour between calls, so that I can just literally offload from the last call, get myself recenter, and get back to and get reconnected to the call that I'm about to have. A lot of when you rush into calls, you're kind of flustered and you're not really thinking, you're not really connected. So in terms of your preparation, how are you feeling before you come on the call? The other thing is, you know, what's the outcome of the conversation? What do you want to get out of it? A lot of people just show up on calls. They haven't really thought it through. You know, with that new manager, it might be that all you want to develop at the beginning is that you just want them to trust you, that you're going to be deliver. You're the person that they can rely on. With that person that you don't really get on with, it could be, well, actually, today I'm going to focus on I'm going to make sure we don't have any arguments and we don't have any digs at each other. You know, if that's something that you've got as a habit that you do with someone, really think about that. A new client, if you're going to build rapport with them, maybe your objective for that very first call is just to get to know them a little bit, and not to go, you know, I don't want you to jump straight into business. The next thing, number 4, is the calm place for the conversation. Now, this might sound a bit weird, but what I mean is, sometimes in conference calls, especially if you're dealing at a senior level, there are contentious issues you need to discuss. And what you want, and sometimes I use a card, or a photograph of, and I have it just at the side of my computer. It's a calm space where I know that if the conversation's going to get contentious, I can focus in on it, and I know that I go, right, I'm getting triggered, don't go there, just keep me in that calm space. It's a really good tool for you to have to keep you away from that kind of, if it's getting difficult. Another thing people do is they do doodles. Sometimes it's it's a sun or something, something that comes into their mind, but something that stops you when you get triggered. And the last thing is when you're on the call, a lot of people, I've talked about it already, a lot of people do this. They're kind of writing when they're doing their thing, and they're, or they're kind of doing something over here. What happens is, as soon as I do that, I kind of lose connection with you, and you're like, this is kind of weird. And I spoke to one leader, and he said to me, whenever he has something really important to say, he makes sure he looks directly at the camera. Directly. He actually has an arrow next to his camera to make sure that he's really connecting with that individual, to make sure that whatever that is, it's a really important point. He wants to make sure that he can convey that. So, John, I'd like to go to our second poll and ask people, which one of those do you consider the least when preparing for a virtual call? What do you know about that person? Do you ever bother looking them up? Do you ever find out? Do you ever think about them? Maybe what they're dealing with right now. How are you feeling? If you can run that, John, that would be great. How are you feeling? Do you actually consider who you're being, who you are going to be as a contribution to that call? Because coming up kind of, angry and a bit kind of, or a bit, fed up, a bit, it's really hard. You've got to find somehow to shift that energy. What outcomes do you think about? I mean, everyone has actions, but what are the outcomes of the conversation? And lastly, where's my calm place? Do I have my calm place? How are we doing, John?
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, even better response this time. We're up to 86% respondents. So I think we can show that if you like.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. So what have we got there? Wow. You don't think about the person at all. How you're feeling. Oh, yeah, okay. The outcomes, isn't that interesting? Yeah, hardly anyone thinks about outcomes. That's interesting. Where's my calm place? You do that. That's great.
It's the opposite way around thing, Penny. It's the one that you least prepare for.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah. So
I've got my glasses on. Right. Oh, the one that, okay, got it. Very interesting. That's really fascinating. So none of us bother about that, we just go for it. Yeah. Well, it's something you might want to consider, because you might, especially with that calm place thing, you might get a better outcome for a conversation, especially if it's a contentious issue, because that could really trigger people. Thank you for that. So let's start at the beginning of the call. So I call this, in coaching, we call it the chemistry session. And I say to people, don't immediately jump into business. You've got to develop your level of empathy and concern. And one of the things you can do is matching. So if somebody comes onto a call and they're kind of like, oh my God, I've just come from here, whatever I'm doing. And they're a bit kind of flustered, your tone, you don't go into, oh yeah, I'm flustered too, but your tone is, yeah, got it, I totally understand it. And you kind of try and bring them down to a calmer space. So you match what they're talking about. Yeah, me too. I've been really busy this morning, but this is a great conversation. What are we going to discuss today? And you kind of bring them down to that calm space by matching them. You get into their world. You're curious. What are they dealing with right now? One of the things that I've learned is that you never know what somebody is dealing with. And for me, when people were ringing me up a few weeks ago, I had somebody in hospital in a life-threatening operation right in the middle of COVID. And to be honest, I was not present, and I was not doing any of this with my calls. I was kind of like, I was kind of not really there. And so you really need to understand where people are at. When you see them in the office, when they come in the morning, they get a coffee, you get a sense of how people are. You see it with how they're walking. Walking's very interesting. People head down, head up. You get a sense of how people are. In the virtual world, you come onto the call like that, you really haven't got a clue. So you want to spend a little bit more time. And I would say sometimes 5 minutes, depending on how long it is, but no more than that. And you really want to really listen to what they're saying, because I had somebody say to me, you know, I was talking about some of the things I was dealing with related to, you know, this person was potentially could have died. And they kind of said, oh, well, they're all right now, aren't they? Oh, okay, yeah, well, let's move on. And it kind of hit me. It was like, wow, they really didn't get, and I didn't communicate what, you know, what I was going through at that moment, in terms of, you know, my level of authenticity and where I am. And I've spoken to quite a lot of leaders who've said that if this is something they never used to do, but they are now actually doing it. If they're having, you know, if they're finding it a bit difficult, they're actually kind of acknowledging that. At least it's not a weakness. You know, I come from a background of, you know, stiff upper lip, keep calm, carry on. If you'd spoken to me 15, 20 years ago, you know, I'd be very focused, action focused, the result. Now I've had to, you know, and I wasn't getting results because people don't respond to that kind of very aggressive style now. It doesn't work. There's no empathy there. There's no integrity. There's no authenticity. And it's just fake. And yeah, we've got to get on and do business. But people react, and it's interesting that people have been telling me this stuff privately. They would never admit it in a public forum. It's been privately when I've been coaching them. And so I know that these issues exist. And another thing you've got to be aware of when you talk to people is, this is my tip number 4, be aware of your prejudices and your privilege. You've got to remember that people come from very different backgrounds and situations, and they may not be experiencing the world as you are. You know, I've noticed it when I've spoken to people and I've said, oh, how is it in COVID? And they've gone, oh, absolutely fine. Nothing different. No, it's not, you know, we're just at work. It's just like being, you know, at work from at home. And what that does is that doesn't allow the other person to say, well, actually, you know, things aren't going so great for me. You know, my husband lost his job. You know, our business is going down. You know, we don't, you know, it's not that people necessarily want to talk about that stuff, but it's acknowledging their state. It's acknowledging that this fake communication of I'm okay. Yes, it's appropriate, of course, because it's business, but I'm talking about how you really connect and empathize with an individual. And people are struggling. You know, I've had some conversations with people around really difficult things. You know, one guy was stuck in a country and he said, I feel really guilty. I'm in Europe and, you know, my business is thousands of miles away. My people are thousands of miles away. I can't connect with them as easy as I would want to. So people are struggling with it, and don't assume that it's all okay. My tip number 5 is about how you ask questions. Making sure you ask open-ended questions. And when, you know, that classic one of, oh, how are you? You know, it's with how are you is you need to think, do I, you know, a lot of people are, oh yeah, I'm fine. Do you actually really want to know? Because how are you can be very kind of fake. It's like, oh, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. That's it. Actually, how are you? It's a different, it's actually, I care about you and I want to understand what's going on in your world and how things are going for you. And if there's anything I can do to support you. It's a very different way of, oh, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. Move on. It's you're cutting down that connection. You're cutting it away. Remember things about them, people you work with. You know, if they had a birthday last week with it was a 4-year-old and they had a party in the garden and they might have mentioned it. You know, how was the party? If you remember things about people, it's instant. It's like, oh, they've actually bothered to remember that. I have people who say that to me all the time because I have a little way that I keep notes and I, you know, just keep things that remind me. And people are always amazed, and it's a technique I've used for a long time, and it really creates a proper connection because you understand that individual much more. If they're in a different country, you know, ask how it is in that country. You have no idea. You know, you don't know what's going on. And moving on to the main part of the call, tip number 6 is about your listening and concentration. I've talked about it a little bit, but this is something I want you to think about. Remember, people can see how you're listening. So I can see John right now, and I can see him. I can see whether he's listening. I can see if he starts to write something down or if he's doing it. I can, people can see how you listen. So you really want to be thinking about that. Don't start texting people. Something else that's been happening in meetings, and I've heard it and I've experienced it, is people are, so I'm presenting and someone's going, oh, look at Penny, what is she going on about? And they're texting one person, it bounces to someone else. And then you see these kind of smirks on the Zoom, people are kind of looking down and they're kind of, and they've got this kind of smirky face. It's really rude. Just don't do it. And if you find people are doing it, don't call them out on the call, speak to them afterwards about it. What was there for you? Why did you feel you need to do that? And also remember, it takes energy. People are looking at you all the time. One of the things I came off social, the reasons I came off a lot of social Zoom meetings is that I felt that people were really like looking, and I felt I had to be like on parade almost. And so, you've got to keep your energy level up for the duration of that call, because it's about building mutual trust and respect. Number 7, create a deeper connection with that individual by asking questions. Now, open-ended questions, follow-up questions, qualification questions. Another thing is when you respond, and this is I coach a lot of people around this, wait before you give your opinion. Make sure you've understood all the facts, because you can get it so wrong. And that thing of, in a conversation, it's kind of like this. You talk, I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk, I talk. And we're kind of like this so much that we just forget to take that breath. We forget to wait, especially, when I was talking earlier about it being a contentious issue. You want to wait and kind of just take a breath. And remember, when you respond, in NLP, there are ways that people learn. The virtual learners, when you're speaking to them, you want to be saying things like, oh, I see what you mean. I get the picture. Oh, what's your view? With virtual learners, the wording and the language that you're using is about seeing it. With auditory people, oh, that rings a bell. Oh, I hear what you're saying. Oh, that sounds okay to me. So it's a different way of hearing when you're responding with that language. So it's all about an auditory influence. And then the kinesthetic people, they're all about feeling. So, oh, how does that feel? Oh, what did you feel when? Or how do you feel about X? Don't hijack the conversation as well. This is a thing that a lot of people do. They forget about their listening skills, and they don't hijack the conversation so that your issues become the subject of the conversation. Remember to be that contribution to the other individual. Tip number 8, consider how you speak to them. This is quite interesting, how they want to receive information. So visual people, they'll talk faster, they'll have a higher pitch, they visualize the big picture. Visual people, they see things like a movie, and they respond to things like presentations, pie charts, graphs. So, there are some people today that will find it odd because there's no presentation. They like to see that. Whereas for me, I wanted to really connect with you through the screen, so that you can understand what it feels like and get some of the techniques. If I did a presentation, it loses that. But it does suit people in certain, for certain situations. Auditory people, they speak in a rhythmic mid-tone. And auditory people, they have a funny thing. Sometimes they tilt their head because they're kind of listening. So it's something you want to look out for. They respond to conversations, questions, and repeating something back. So you'll find with an auditory person, they often want to recreate that conversation. And the last one is the kinesthetics. They talk a lot slower. because they want to get in touch with their feelings. They want to think about what's being said. They speak in a deeper voice. They have long pauses between their statements, and they memorize things by walking through the process. They respond to checklists, notebooks. They write things down. So be aware when you're talking to somebody through a screen, what's happening, what are the words that they're using. Number 9, be aware of your emotions. Now, this is in relation to how you respond. If you sense an emotion in another person, whether it's positive or negative, or it's, you know, it's highly stressed, you want to pitch your response accordingly. So if they've got lots of energy, you want to have your high energy kind of response. If they're kind of a bit contemplative, a bit quiet, give them that space and that moment to think. They may need that moment. And a lot of the times, because it's this digital way of communicating, we forget. You would do it much more naturally if they were sat in front of you. But because it's just a screen and it's a very flat way of communicating, you can lose some of that sense. And number 10, my last one, is non-verbal cues. So to show this to when someone's explaining something to me. So John, I'd like you to do this back if you wouldn't mind. When I'm trying to explain something to John, I'll see him nodding. Yeah, he'll nod that he's getting what I'm talking about. And he'll use eye contact, and I can see he's looking at me directly. Something else that I notice with people is a lot of people do this. They're kind of hunched over. And also where your camera is. I've got my camera about an arm's length, and it's actually on a level with my face. So that, because a lot of people have kind of, I don't want to change the angle, but I used to do this in the very beginning. I'd have it kind of, you know, your laptop tilted back, so you see the lampshade behind you. So what that person sees is your head coming out of a lampshade, and it just looks weird. I purposely this afternoon, I put these nice flowers to make it look a really welcoming environment for you. You know, you want to be thinking about that when it's all about how can you be of service to the other individual, and just creating that kind of calm space. It does make a big difference. Don't start yawning. I've seen people kind of yawning, doing, all sorts of things, kind of scratching, doing just all those weird things. You've got to be really aware of what you do on a call, because it's very distracting. And the other thing is, you want to keep your hands visible, because when I put my hands down here, it's kind of weird. You're not really sure what's going on. But as soon as I bring them up here, it brings a totally different connection. I think let me see, John, how are we getting on with time? What are we doing now? Do we want to, because it's 12:30 now, I want to make sure that people get time for questions. I can see there's an awful lot there in the chat box. So is there anything you want to bring up at this point, John?
Thanks, Penny. No, just watching the chat box. There's some great comments coming in. A lot of thankfulness, really, for the tips and reminders. Someone just said, I've discovered more recently I've started to talk over people. Any tips? Oh,
yeah. So when you talk over somebody, one of the things you can do is you can put an elastic band. It's like a trigger. And when you find yourself doing it, you kind of ping it. It's a funny, or whatever that is for you. It's like a kind of pinching. It's like a kind of pinching system. The other thing is, when you talk over somebody, what you want to do is it's about your preparation. Right, today, the objective for me for this call is I'm not going to talk over that person. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to really listen. You see what it is? What you're doing is you're listening to them, but you're forming your response in your mind to jump straight back. You know how I said it's like this, boom, 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 boom. You want to be able to just give that pause. So what I often do, especially, this is a really good tip if someone's ranting, actually, if they're getting really annoyed. So I just literally go, okay, let's just let it go. I'll describe it a bit like a wave coming in from the sea. So they're coming in, and there they go, and then they've hit the wave, and then they go out, and often at the crest of the wave, that's when you come in. What I want you to do is let that crest of the wave happen, but then let it fall. It falls naturally to the edge of the seashore, and kind of think about that natural. Just let them go on and on and on, especially in an argument. And they'll run out of steam. I'm telling you, you try it, they'll run out of steam. The other thing to think about is, remember that sometimes they want you to come back at you like that, so that they can just argue the other point. You know, oh, well, I think this, well, I think this, well, I think this, well, I think this. Just breathe and kind of let it come, and just let that conversation fall, and then you can naturally come back at it. You'll find, and it takes practice, I'm telling you, these are skills that I've developed over years. It takes practice, but try it out. And just, you know, if you want your kind of elastic band, whatever works for you, think about that wave coming in. I hope that helps. John, anything else?
Yeah, no, great. A lovely question from Paloma. I'd just ask if you would like to come on the panel just to ask the question in person, if that's okay, Matt. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course, Paloma. Lovely to see you. I know her very well.
Have people on the panel, yeah.
Yeah, great.
She'll come and join us. I think she's. Oh, let's see. It's always a risk, this. Unmute audio.
Don't worry, just try it out. If it doesn't work,
yeah.
There she is.
Great.
There she is.
Hi,
Paloma.
So I have two questions, Penny. First of all, thank you very much for your time today. It's been another fantastic talk. I've really enjoyed it, and I find it really interesting, because most of the things you've said, I've either done myself or seen in other people, which is really interesting. So I have two questions. The first one is, how do you manage communications with a client who goes around in circle a little bit to the point you struggle to understand what they're talking about, when in a normal face-to-face conversation you would probably use other resources like a whiteboard or pen and paper, but now obviously you can't. So I found myself in a situation when I had a client asking me to do something, and I didn't really have a clue what he was talking about, but I couldn't ask him any more times to repeat, because it's not that I wasn't understanding, it's that he wasn't making the point any clear. And it's something that I've experienced with this client before, and obviously some of the people has experienced too. So in previous conversations, what I've done is just try to draw something down or write something, like do a schematic picture or something to try and understand what he was saying. But obviously now, and you can see that in Zoom meetings, he becomes more and more frustrated because people doesn't just get what he's trying to say.
So that's a really interesting one, and thank you for that. It's something that you might want to have a conversation with him offline, a private conversation, and just what you do is you don't make him wrong. You kind of put it on yourself, and you say, you know, I'm really struggling because I kind of wasn't sure about this, and it looks to me it's like this. Can you just give me 3 phrases that describe what you're looking for? So you're almost asking them to say, give me 3 short phrases. Okay. Because then, and allow them to think in the space, because when you're asking them to do that, they're going to be thinking, oh, I don't know. Everything's going around in their head. Oh, I've got to answer really quickly. And you kind of say, well, just take your time and just think about, if I asked you for 3, what I'm asking for is 3 bullet points, right? But don't say that, because if you say it's a bullet point, people, they think about it differently. But if you just say 3 phrases of what you're looking for, or how you can describe it, and I'm just going to give you some time to think about it, but do it offline and kind of train them into doing it and experiment over time. Don't expect, and you certainly don't want to criticize them. No. Say, you know, because obviously it's a client, and it's a challenge for them, and it's trying to work with them gradually on a one-to-one. And then another thing you could do is, before you go on to a Zoom meeting, is try this technique out with them, and to try and help them to kind of clarify in their mind what they want, and then maybe you could prompt them by saying, so it's this, it's this, it's this.
Yeah, so in the past, something I've done, which it has worked with other people, but it's not working with this particular client, is to rephrase what he just said. So what you're trying to say is that you want this, this, and that. And then he said, oh, yes, that's exactly what I want. And then I've done that. And it's, no, that's not what I wanted. I was like, oh.
So all you do is you just go back. And you just go back and say, look, I really want to get some clarity around this.
Okay.
You don't want to make them wrong. And I would do it maybe 2-3 times for one issue, no more than that.
Yep.
Because after that, they might, and you've got to be really aware of how sensitive they are. That's why I asked you to do it privately, because they might be feeling. You
don't want to expose them to the team.
Yeah, they may be feeling a bit attacked, and so it's doing it in a gentle way to try and kind of summarize that for them. But it is a challenge, and it's going to take time, and you might have to try different strategies.
Okay. The other question I had, if I may, is what are your thoughts on clothing, space around attendees, background noises like kids? Do you think normality, like kids talking, no makeup, just normal household noises around, should be integrated within the Zoom meetings, or should we try to look like we have a dedicated study room where we can work undisturbed? How do you feel? Because I've seen people turning their cameras off, so turning them on at the beginning of the meeting and then turning them off. And I thought that they may be finding, I don't know, maybe self-awareness disturbing or unsettling, or they don't like seeing themselves because what other people may think. I take it very naturally. So I'm in my living room, my kids are around, but I have already noticed that there is people that are not really enjoying this sort of natural but not natural kind of atmosphere. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that one.
So I kind of touched on it earlier in terms of, I turned today into, I created this space, this bubble today. And it's a very personal thing because everybody is different. I think you want to be maybe creating some protocols before you go on to a call where you can kind of put, we're all in different situations. If this is your situation, if this is what you can do, that's great. Do your best. People will do their best. Sometimes they can't avoid it. I've had people on Zoom calls where they've had childcare transitions. So they've had to kind of, go and deal with a child, but they'll, one of the things I'd say to people, if you've got something to do, you can always put it in the chat box. I just need to be away for 5 minutes. I will be back and I'll turn my camera off. So they turn the camera off for the 5 minutes they're away. They go and deal with what they've got to deal with, and then they come back. So you can use the chat pane for doing that. So you can set up protocols for what you want, but it's very difficult. And you asked about dress, because there's every manner of dress, isn't there? From suited to booted, right down to the scruffiest t-shirt on the planet.
Zoom dress codes.
There aren't any. I mean, the thing is, you are at work, you are in the workplace, you are representing your company. So for me, it's about your own my personal values. Like I wouldn't turn up today, in my scruffy t-shirt that I had on, an hour ago. I just wouldn't do it, because for me, for my integrity, I want to be a contribution to people. I want to be professional, but everyone's different. They have a different view about it. This is the interesting thing about the difference from working in an office to working at home. Some people haven't quite realized that transition to home, where they're working from home and everything's casual, but you need to have a level of professionalism. You don't need to be suited and booted. It depends what you're doing. If you're talking to 800 people, then I would suggest you would. But if you're, if it's your team meeting and there's 10 of you, there's a level of casualness, but always, for me, I always err on the side of caution and a little bit more professional. So if it's a guy, just a button-down shirt, it's just slightly more business-like than a t-shirt. For a lady, it's a nice top or a dress, whatever it is. It's a personal preference, but it's difficult because you don't want to be judging people, but you have to be aware that people do that. I think one of the funniest things is what we're seeing on the TV when you're seeing all these celebrities. You want to see inside their homes. You're looking at the books they've got on their shelf. You're looking at, oh, what's that in the corner? Well, one of the reasons I did this today is you can see it's a white space. It's much more calm. It's very clear. Do you see what I mean? It's creating that, it's trying to create a level of calmness, I think, in these calls, because they can be quite frenetic, but in a very different way from when you're face to face. Does that help?
I was mute. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Penny.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, John, have we got any more questions? How are we doing?
Yeah, no, we have. Yeah, we've got some questions. We've got Gerald's got a question, so I might bring Gerald onto the panel if that's okay, Gerald. Be great to have him. So let's do that.
It's Gerald.
He should be coming onto the panel.
Oh,
hi, Gerald.
Hi, Gerald.
I'll just get see if I can open up your mic and that's it, Gerald. Thank you.
Hi, Gerald. Great to see you today.
And you. That was really interesting, Penny. I'm guilty of a few things there.
Don't worry about it. We're here to learn. Don't worry about it.
I did answer an email. Yeah, really interesting. But when we think about communicating in a new world, we're going to carry on remotely collaborating for probably forever now. And there are so many fantastic tools out there, digital tools to do that. Are you creating tip number 11 to look at some of the things, like the whiteboards, the polls, and some of the other collaboration tools that are out there? Because there's lots of situations where the verbal connection, which you articulated really well, is not going to be enough. That you want to, when you sit with somebody, you have a piece of paper and you scribble and you pass things around and you look at things. And I just wonder whether construction particularly is not going to be aware of what's available and make best use of it. And we're going to get zoomed out and then we're going to rush back to face-to-face. So I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that and if you're seeing clients and things.
That's very interesting, Gerald, and thank you for bringing that up. I guess I think, using whiteboards, for those of you who don't know what using a whiteboard is, basically what it is, you set it up in the background and you bring it into the screen. It takes up the whole screen, and then people can start typing or writing, whatever happens. And so if we're having a discussion about a subject and we want to get some ideas, not necessarily the chat room might be the right space, so we can bring it in and people just randomly write things. So it's almost like you're writing your thoughts. That's the kind of thing you're talking about, isn't it, Gerald?
Yeah, perhaps not using the whiteboard that comes with Zoom, but some external tools that have got more features. And you might draw as well. You might just be typing and writing. You could be drawing, and you can even upload video and chat and all sorts of other resources in there.
One thing I would say is, and I had an interesting conversation with a lady when she works locally in Exeter, and she works for a very big firm, quite a lot of people. And she found, so the firm shut down within 36 hours, everybody's equipment was transported out to their homes. Incredible operation. And she is somebody who works in an office all the time, and she has never worked remotely. She found it very challenging, the transition, because she lives in the countryside. Her broadband, the bandwidth was not good. She didn't really know. She'd never used Zoom before. She'd never used Skype, Teams. She didn't know what she was doing. And for the first 2 weeks, she really struggled with it. She had a lot of anxiety around it. I helped her a lot, but we talked about how that, how she was feeling around it. So I think whilst there are lots of tools that you can use, what you want to be clear about is when you're going to use them, is that everyone understands how to use them. Never assume that people know, because it can be very frustrating if you're kind of on the back foot a bit and you can't, and you're, oh, I don't know how, where am I?
Yeah, sorry, that's no different to introducing a tool into a workplace, is it? You show people how to use it, have some examples. I just was thought it would be interesting to see if your clients are starting to use those sorts of things.
Well, to be honest, most people have. I've been using those with my clients for a long time. I've been using whiteboards, polls, all sorts of things, especially in PowerPoint. You know, you prepare them, they come in. So yes, I would say, but that is with large organizations. I wouldn't necessarily assume that with smaller organizations.
Yeah. Thank you, Benny.
It's
really interesting. We'll have to catch up again.
Yeah, great. Lovely to see you.
Thanks very much, Gerald.
Thank you.
We've got another question. We've got a couple more questions we've got one from Robbie and also from Simon. So I'll bring them in if that's okay. Let's just see if I can do that. Just come onto the panel, and I'll also bring in Simon's got a question. Perhaps we'll take Robbie's first of all. If not, I hope that's okay, Robbie. If not, we can take Simon's question.
Here he comes. Here he comes. Who's that? Simon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Penny. Very useful tips. I should be copying that chat and certainly having that. I just wondered whether you thought that this recent situation now where we're all using Zoom and Teams or whichever platform it is that we favour, it's been a bit of unconscious training for us, as in, you know, we're sort of learning about our presentation and our communication almost without realising it. And I think anybody that was in the past a little bit reticent about certainly talking to groups of people from 1 to 30 or whatever, it might actually have done a lot of people passively without realising it quite a lot of good. Would you agree with that, or what would you think?
I think, by the way, one thing for you, by the way, to know, something I noticed straight away, you've got a very clear tone. So that's good feedback for you to know about. I should have shared that with other people as well. But you articulate your words really clearly, by the way. So that's something to know. In terms of how people respond, again, some people love it and some people just do, you know, they just don't like it. And if somebody doesn't like it, if you're working with a team and you find that there is somebody that is finding it difficult, you probably want to do a little bit of work with them on a one-to-one, I would say, a little bit more to help build their confidence, and maybe get them to run a call with maybe just a couple of people and take it over time. Because some people just don't like it. They physically don't like looking at themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult. It can be very challenging with all those faces. And it's something when I train people how to speak in public, one of the things they tell me their biggest fear is when they get up and stand in front of people is all those eyes. You know, all those eyes, it can be so intimidating. And there are techniques that I use with them to help them relax around that. And some of it is literally just being able to look at people. But here it's very different, because I could choose to look at you, but I could look at John, for example, and he's got his video turned off. So suddenly, oh, what's going on there? You know, so people are doing different things all the time. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But it's quite difficult. So I would start baby steps with, you know, work it out. You probably know. Are you thinking about people that you work with?
No, not really. No, I've just spoken to a lot of people that I've never spoken to before in the last few weeks, you know, and it's very, you're always conscious about that very good first impression, about getting a little bit of understanding and empathy with people. And I'm used to dealing face to face with people in an unusual situation people I haven't met before on a daily basis. So for me, it's not unusual. It's not a foreign situation for me. So doing it face to face or doing it to Zoom is entirely visual communication and engagement, and I'm like to think that I try and grasp that and are reasonably good at it to get that engagement going. Particularly what you said earlier about find out what that person does, you know, and engage them immediately in how did the last caving trip go, or you know, what about that Morgan that's sat in the garage that you haven't restored yet, all that sort of thing, and that immediately gives you a rapport with somebody. But not everybody's thought about that. You know, it's an unusual situation that we're in, that people perhaps haven't been out and about and haven't had that engagement with people, or being forced to do it as a daily routine. So they perhaps have learned a lot more than they would perhaps admit that they have from having been in front of the camera or even just contributed to discussions.
Yeah, they've been forced into it. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Simon.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, and just before we bring in Robbie, there's a couple of things that builds on Simon's comment there about how do you, an anonymous attendee, how do you develop a clear tone? Some people may be seen as mumblers and can be putting off. So perhaps you can answer that or have a thought about that, Penny, before we bring in Rob, and I'll send Simon back to the, I was going to say the sin bin then, but it's far from sin. It's you had a great contribution there. Thanks.
Yeah, lovely.
No problem. Thank you very much,
Thank
Penny.
you, Simon.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So, in terms of tone and pitch, something that I do when I'm speaking is I'm much more clear about my diction, and my mouth moves a lot more. And it's something when I'm coaching people how to speak in public. So if I have a good old chat with you and I'm just like flaring along like this, I'm much more casual in my speech, and it's kind of, but when I'm speaking to you and making sure that I want you to know what I'm talking about, you notice, you can hear the T's. I finish my S's. I finish with all those parts of diction. They help. And then with tone, yeah, you have some people that are kind of, I've been down here and I'm going to do this today. And I mean, what you want to be thinking about is creating light and shade, ups and downs. And that it does take practice, actually. It's very difficult. I do it naturally. You find with different countries, so Americans, their tone tends to go up at the end of the conversation. There's always an inflection up. Different countries have different ways of doing it, but in terms of the tone, it takes practice, and you want to create what I want you to think about is the light and shade of a conversation. It's kind of a dance. It's, some of it's a bit slower, some of it's a bit faster. Remember back to the thinking, feeling, and the seeing, and the auditory people. So you want to be thinking about how you communicate and change that tone. Does that help, John?
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Penny. That's really good. I was going to just bring in Robbie, but we're going to leave that one. His question, we'll pick that up later. So I think we're getting towards the time. We've got one more poll, haven't we? And then it's always really good to have Andrew come back on the panel just to do the sort of closing remarks. So I'll bring Andrew up. Can we run that poll though while we're there?
Don't worry, I'm happy to leave that poll because we had lots of good questions.
Okay, great. I'll just see if Andrew's still there. Hopefully he's still there, Andrew. Hopefully we'll bring you into the panel. You'll come in.
Whilst you're doing that, I will just say to everybody, if you want to be in touch with me, that's how you get in touch with me. Feel free to take a screen grab of that. My phone number, email, I'm all over social media. So if you'd like to have some further conversations with me, feel free to get in touch.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you. Lively as ever. Yeah, really good hour spent. Thank you very much for your time. And as you say, we've got a lot of interesting questions, which is always a good barometer of whether people have been interested. So thank you, Penny. And thank you once again to you, John, for organising it. Really much appreciated. We're doing it all again on Friday. We've got Andrew Dewar back. It's the first time we've invited somebody back. Slightly different topic. He's going to be talking about teams, great teams. That's this coming Friday at midday. So I don't think we've got anything else, John, in the chat box, have we, to announce?
I don't think so. I'm just looking now. No.
Any more Q&As or
any more Q&As? Not. I know there was one that we couldn't take up because of the background noise, but we can perhaps they can send questions to you afterwards. I think just for the sake of
Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I think for the I always believe it's really good to end with a bit of reflection. So I think your last poll, Penny, was really good. I might just pop that up because it's as we come away from this call, I think to really land what you've come up with, because I've certainly wrote a lot of notes down as to how I'm going to do things differently. Perhaps. So I quite like your last poll, if that's okay, just to end on that.
Absolutely, yeah.
It just gives us a bit of a chance to think, if there was
that's good call, John.
What's Andrew?
I said it's great idea. I'm doing the talking over you bit.
So the last poll, guys, and if there was one thing that you could really improve the most as a result of what we heard today, of those 10 tips, and I'm sure you'll get a chance to practice this almost within seconds of leaving this call, probably. So I'll leave that on the screen.
I've just answered mine, John. I think the pre-conversation we had before we opened up to the public is probably a bit of a giveaway for mine.
It's great that people are thinking about it though, because we kind of go into everything automatically, and this is hopefully giving people time to reflect and really get some quality around their communication.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a massive topic, and I love the fact that we've brought it up, because I think it's one of these things where as we don't know what the world looks like in the future, you know, and I know Andrew's desperately keen to make sure the construction industry is not a laggard in terms of technology and so on. But one thing, whatever the future is with artificial intelligence and all the advances are, one thing around communication, we will always have people. There'll always be people around. And so this is, you know, in terms of future-proofing yourself, to get good at communication, it's going to be one of those critical skills that people should do. So I'm delighted that we've got this as a topic. I think we could spend weeks on this.
Whilst I've embraced online technology, Teams, Zoom, webinars, like there's no tomorrow, because it's the only way to communicate at the present, I have to say that after 10, 11 weeks, I now crave some human contact. I think coming out of this, there will have to be a balance. I hope that this is never the only way going forward that we communicate, because for the health and well-being of all of us, we're human beings and we need human contact. So this is brilliant, but we have to get the combination right, in my view.
Yeah, I agree.
Great, thanks, Hannah. There's the results of the poll. I'll just put them up very quickly, and then I'll hand back to Howard, because I'm conscious the time is upon us. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for all the different contributions in the chat pane. You've been asked to send your details again, Penny, so I'll put those.
Oh yeah, I'll put them up
pane.
for people if they'd like them.
I'd like to hold that up again.
Yeah.
Hold it back a bit, Penny. We can't see. That's it. That's more like it.
That's it. All we need to see is the mobile.
Yeah,
oh, and
your distance right. Okay. Thanks, Howard. Are you going to give us an out?
Yeah, I will do. Great, Penny. Thanks very much. Super talk. Really interesting. Got great involvement. And I hope that everyone who's still with us thoroughly enjoyed it and going away with lessons to learn. I am certainly. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you, John. Thank you, Penny.
See you
now,
Howard. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody. Thanks,
See you
everybody.
later, Andrew.
I'll just shut the room down. You happy for me, Howard, just to
yeah,
or should we close down for a little bit, or I'm happy just to shut the room down.
I don't know. We've got people listening in still, so
yeah, still 7 there. So
thanks very much, Penny. Super job.
Oh, thank you. I hope that was kind of what you were looking for.
And did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I loved it actually. I tell you what's really hard is I can't read I couldn't read the chat, and I couldn't, you know, when I got the poll thing wrong, it's because I couldn't really read it. I couldn't, oh my God, that I need to do, because I don't want to wear glasses.
Why not? It's okay to wear it's okay to wear reading glasses.
I know, it's just another layer that of disconnection. So I kind of prefer not to if I can, but in future I'm going to have to bring them up to look at the chat, because I can't, you know, if I really got on